The Leviathan unit were the first ones to receive news that the former commander was back in the U.S. Their unit had stationed spies in the city near the eastern border. They didn't know the Sovereign's true identity, but the higher-ups did, and they were elated. Stephen was alive, and he'd returned unharmed. This was a blessing to their country. After a moment, they suppressed their excitement and got down to business. They had to report this to the Supreme Leader and get in contact with Stephen immediately. At this time, 3 of the 5 guardians of the palace were gathered in Washington, D.C. "Wes, any news on Mr. Adams' whereabouts?" Nora asked impatiently. 3 months ago, Stephen had decided to attend the transatlantic summit alone. After what happened on the mountain, Nora had been blaming himself for not going with him. The world thought the Sovereign was dead, but they'd never stopped searching for him. They believed that he was still alive. "If you don't know, how would I know?" Wes snapped. "Aston will be here in a minute. You should ask him instead." As if on cue, Aston burst through the door and strode inside. "I have good news. Mr. Adams is at the eastern border." "Is this information credible?" Nora, Wes, and Sorav asked in unison. "Absolutely. There's no mistake. Mr. Adams is back." Today was a special day for the Cassidy family. All of their members were standing guard at home. DeAndre, Wayne, and Rachel were waiting for them in the conference room. Today was the 3-month deadline that Stephen had agreed to propose. Wayne and Rachel already knew Stephen's identity, and they knew that he wouldn't be coming back. If the family gathered like this, it would humiliate Kim if her husband was a no-show. They tried to talk her out of it, but she insisted on waiting. Wayne and Rachel had no choice but to go along with it. They couldn't reveal Stephen's identity to the Cassidy family. "Do you really think Stephen's coming back?" Rebecca mocked. "He's probably enjoying his luxurious life in his mansion in Cadiz." Harry snickered. "Maybe he's surrounded by beautiful women as we speak. There's no place for you anymore, Kim." "If I were Stephen, I wouldn't come back," Rome said. "He has everything he could ever ask for in Cadiz. Why would he return to the U.S. and suffer? There's only one ending waiting for a traitor like him." The Cassidy family chattered away, but Kim wasn't fazed. "Waiting is pointless," Helen said. "The truth is right in front of us. Stephen has abandoned you and Valeria. He probably settled down with another family in Cadiz. He's long forgotten about you two." "Daddy's not a liar," Valeria yelled. "You're just a child. How are you so sure?" "Humph, I just know." While Helen and Valeria were bickering, Kim glanced at her watch. It was still early. The 3-month deadline wouldn't be up until the day was over. Wayne's heart clenched when he saw how determined she was to wait for Stephen. "Kim, Stephen's really not coming back." "You should give up," Rachel suggested gently. "Mr. Wayne, Miss Rachel, I understand your concerns, but you don't know what Stephen's like," Kim said. "He never makes promises he can't keep. He said he'll come back in 3 months, so he will." "I also want him to come back, but—" Wayne trailed off and sighed. A missile had turned Mount Reef into ruins. Stephen's martial arts were extraordinary, but he was human. He couldn't possibly have survived a weapon of war. Helen finished Wayne's sentence for him. "Stephen's never coming back. He's a traitor. Everyone knows that. Why would he return? It's a waste of time to keep waiting." Natalie patted Kim's shoulder. She was worried about her. "Your grandma is right. Let's give up." In the eyes of the Cassidy family, it was a definite fact that Stephen was a traitor. They'd been waiting for Kim for a while. It was about time to leave. "No, if you don't want to wait, then you can all leave on your own. I'll wait for Stephen to come back. There are still 7 or 8 hours until midnight. The deadline's not up until tomorrow. If he doesn't come back by midnight, then I'll accept it." Rebecca threw her hands up in frustration. "You're really stubborn. I'm a busy person. I don't have time to wait so many hours with you. You can wait by yourself. Call me over when Stephen's back." She left the room. Harry, Rome, and the rest of the Cassidy family followed her out. Helen also stood up. "I'm old. My body can't take it anymore." Wayne, Rachel, Kim, and Valeria were the only ones left in the room. After waiting some more, Wayne and Rachel stepped out. The morning passed in a blur, then the afternoon was over. Soon, it was late in the evening. There was still no movement outside the house. Wayne and Rachel were waiting in the other room. "Is she still waiting?" Wayne asked. Rachel nodded. "She's still in there. She barely touched her dinner." "It's already 10 o'clock. Bring her some food from the kitchen and try to persuade her that Mr. Adams won't be coming back." "I'll try." But Kim wasn't moved by Rachel's words. Rachel had no choice but to leave the room after setting the tray on the table. "Is Kim still waiting?" Helen asked the crowd. "Yeah, it's almost midnight," Rebecca answered. "It's practically confirmed that Stephen's not coming back." Harry looked at the clock on the wall. "To be precise, there are only 5 more minutes left before midnight." "And let's go back to the room," Helen said. "We'll make her give up on Stephen." The Cassidy family crowded around Helen and headed to the conference room. Kim was still sitting in the same seat at the table. "Kim, how long are you going to wait?" Helen demanded. Rebecca pointed at the clock. "There's only 1 minute left until midnight. Do you really think Stephen will be back before tomorrow?" "It's not a big deal for him to abandon you and Valeria," Harry said. "He can have all the women he wants in Cadis. You're foolish for thinking he'll come back for you." "There are only 30 seconds left," Rebecca said. "Are you waiting for a countdown?" Helen waved her hand dismissively. "It's late. Let's go to bed. That traitor is never coming back." She gestured to Harry and Rebecca. They went up to Kim to bring her and Valeria upstairs. Wayne and Rachel cared about Kim, and she and her daughter were the first members of the family to join the Fallon family. They couldn't let Kim get sick from staying up late and barely having her meals. "Who said I betrayed the country? Why wouldn't I come back?" A familiar voice stopped everyone in their tracks. It was midnight. The next day had arrived. Valeria was the first to react. She ran towards the door. "Daddy, you're back!" Stephen picked her up and swung her around. Kim couldn't hold back her tears. She ran up to him like Valeria had and threw her arms around him. "I knew you'd come back." Stephen held her close. "I promised you and Valeria, didn't I?" The Cassidy family was floored. Just a moment ago, they were certain they would never be seeing Stephen again, but he came back at the last second. "Is it just me, or is there something different about him?" Rebecca asked. Harry looked Stephen over. "He looks the same, but there's something off." Helen cracked the mystery. She pointed at Stephen's legs. "He's not in a wheelchair. He can stand." Realization dawned on the Cassidy family. Kim had been so happy to see Stephen again that she hadn't noticed he wasn't in a wheelchair. She pulled back and gave him a once-over. "Are your legs recovered?" "Yeah, they're fine now." Stephen was smiling at her, but he seemed different from the last time she had seen him. She put her hand on his forehead to check his temperature. His bangs brushed against her skin. "You look a little tired. Are you sure you're okay?" Stephen couldn't remember the last time they'd been this close. Kim's hand was warm. He'd missed this. "I'm fine, really." And he meant it. He'd been through a lot since he left for Cadis, and there was still so much he had to do. But seeing Kim again made everything else seem insignificant. It felt like he could breathe again. In the other room, Wayne and Rachel were hesitating. It was midnight, and they knew the results. In the end, they pulled themselves together and stood up. "It's late. Let's head over and comfort her," Wayne said. This was the only thing they could do for Stephen. Rachel followed him to the conference room. Just as they were about to go in, they heard a commotion inside. "Why is it so noisy in there?" Wayne asked. Rachel frowned. "The Cassidy family are probably yelling at Kim." Wayne's expression turned serious. "Let's go in. As long as I'm here, I won't let anyone disrespect Kim and her daughter." He threw open the door. "What are you all arguing about?" Wayne was planning on using this as an excuse to reprimand the Cassidy family, but the words died on his tongue the moment he made eye contact with Stephen. He staggered in shock and had to press a hand to the wall to steady himself. Rachel, who'd been following Wayne closely, wasn't faring much better. She turned pale as she had just seen a ghost. The Cassidy family stared at them in confusion. They didn't know why they were so scared of Stephen. He was the former commander, but was that enough to elicit such a big reaction from them? DeAndre was annoyed that the Cassidy family was just standing there. "What are you waiting for? Check on them." Helen quickly told Harry, Rebecca, and Rome to see if Wayne and Rachel were okay. It was rare for them to lose their composure. Watching them without help was disrespectful. They needed the Fallon family on their side. "Wayne, Rachel, what's going on?" DeAndre asked. He couldn't understand why they'd reacted so strongly at the sight of Stephen. The Cassidy family was also curious. Wayne took a deep breath to calm down. "I was just shocked. I didn't think he would come back." "How would you react if someone you thought you'd never see again showed up in front of you?" Rachel added quickly. Their explanation was far-fetched, and it left DeAndre and the Cassidy family puzzled. Stephen chimed in before DeAndre could question them further. "My sudden appearance must have been surprising. Did you two think I was dead?" Wayne and Rachel's hearts pounded when Stephen stared at them with that intense gaze they hadn't seen in 3 months. They knew exactly what he was implying. No, we're thrilled that you're home," Wayne exclaimed in a fluster. "We're glad you're safe." DeAndre and the Cassidy family looked at Wayne, bewildered by the sudden respect in his tone. It sounded like he was talking to his boss. Rachel noticed that Wayne had almost given himself away. She cleared her throat to remind him. Wayne got the hint and rushed to clarify. "What I meant to say was that Stephen is Kim's husband and Valeria's father. They're reunited, and that's a good thing." Rachel joined in to smooth things over. "That's exactly what Dad meant. If Stephen didn't come back, Valeria would have grown up without a father." Wayne walked up to Stephen. "I'm glad you're back." After a pause, he added, "Of course, it's because it would be a shame for Kim to lose her husband and Valeria to lose her father." Rachel gave Stephen a smile as she blinked back tears. Stephen nodded in response. There wasn't much he could say without exposing himself, but it was his acknowledgement of their concern for him. Valeria put her hands on Stephen's face and made him look at her. "I'm happy you're here too. I knew you'd come back." Stephen kissed her cheek. "Daddy will never go back on his promise." He held out his hand to Kim. "It's been exactly 3 months. Will you come home with me, Kim?" Kim took his hand and nodded. "Let's go home." Just as they were about to leave, someone called out to them. "Wait." They turned around and saw Rebecca with her hands on her hips. "Do you not care about the Cassidy and Fallon families? You're forgetting something." Stephen gave her an unamused look. "What am I forgetting?" Wayne and Rachel understood what Rebecca was referring to. DeAndre had set a condition for Stephen to fulfill before he could take Kim and Valeria home. When Wayne came to Washington, D.C., he'd enforced their agreement, but that was before he found out who Stephen was. Stephen was the sovereign, and he'd become the leader of the Fallon family. Wayne wouldn't dare to impose conditions on him now. Rebecca scoffed. "You seem to have forgotten, so let me remind you. You can't leave with Kim and Valeria until you meet the requirements." Harry took over the conversation. "Within 3 months, you had to take back your position as the commander or achieve a higher position." The entire Cassidy family stared at Stephen, including DeAndre. They waited for his answer. Wayne and Rachel held their breaths and didn't say a word. The Cassidy family were out of their minds. They were making things difficult for the sovereign. "Stephen, tell us," Helen said. "Have you fulfilled the condition? Actually, hold on. Mr. Wayne and Miss Rachel want the best for Kim and Valeria, so we could lower the requirements. You don't need to be the commander. Becoming the general of the army will suffice. What do you think, Mr. Wayne?" Wayne hurriedly gave his approval. Helen looked at Stephen again. "Stephen, I'm asking you a question. What's your answer?" "Do you have the qualifications or not?" Rebecca urged. "No, I'm not the commander-in-chief anymore," Stephen said. "Kylan is the commander." Harry laughed. You rushed over before the deadline, so I thought you had something to show for yourself, but you're still the same as before. As you are now, what right do you have to take Kim and Valeria away? Rebecca asked. Stephen, I'm not trying to criticize you, but you should have some dignity, Helen chided. Are you guys done? Stephen snapped. I'm not the commander anymore, but I've accomplished much more than what I achieved back then. Rebecca snorted. Are you expecting us to believe that? Why are you so confident? Commander Gale defeated you in a duel a while back. Now that you've recovered, I doubt you're as strong as you were before. I've come a long way since then, Stephen said. It's beyond your imagination. Stop being so long-winded and tell us. What have you accomplished? Helen asked. Sorry, but I can't tell you for the time being. The Sovereign's identity was top secret. There weren't that many people in the country who knew his identity. Do you think we're idiots? Helen demanded. If you can't tell us that, what can you tell us? Wayne and Rachel glanced at Stephen in concern when he hesitated. In the end, he said, Nothing for now. Helen flew into a rage. Then you have no reason to take Kim and Valeria away. Stephen is my husband and he's Valeria's father, Kim said matter-of-factly. What other reason do you need? Kim's right. Whether I'm qualified or not, that's none of your business. Stephen turned to Wayne and Rachel, who was standing beside him. Mr. Wayne, what's your opinion? Do I have a right to bring my wife and daughter home? Wayne nodded quickly and extended his hand to the door. Of course. You may leave whenever you want. DeAndre and the Cassidy family were stunned. Wayne, why did you agree so fast? DeAndre asked. Don't you remember our agreement with him? He's not the commander, nor is he the general, Rebecca protested. DeAndre agreed. None of us will be able to accept it if you don't give us an explanation. If it's an explanation you want, then I'll give you one, Wayne said. First, Stephen is rumored to be a traitor, but he came back within 3 months as promised. That's enough proof that he's responsible. At the very least, he proved your accusations wrong. You thought he wouldn't show his face in the country again, but here he is. DeAndre considered it. Wayne's explanation was reasonable. Second, he's recovered, which proves that he's capable of defending his family and protecting them from harm. He said he can't tell us his accomplishments right now, but we can give him the benefit of the doubt. He must have his reasons. I enforced the agreement back then because there were many people targeting Kim and Valeria. If he returned to his position as the commander, it would mean that he has the capability to protect them. That's no longer necessary because he's recovered. With all this being said, I believe there's no reason to stop them from leaving. After all, you're only doing this because you hope for the best for Kim and Valeria, right? The Cassidy family wanted to protest, but they didn't see anything wrong with his explanation. Wayne had given Stephen permission to leave, so Helen didn't have any more reason to stop him. You can bring Kim and Valeria home, but if you don't treat them well, we'll bring them right back. Don't worry, I will, Stephen replied. Harry glared at Stephen's back as he left the house with Kim and Valeria. We're just going to let him leave like that? What else are we supposed to do? Rebecca grumbled. This had been Wayne's decision. They didn't have the courage to go against him. We can't let our guard down, Rome said. Stephen used to be the commander, and now he's recovered. He won't be satisfied with an ordinary life anymore. Kim and Valeria were the first ones in our family to become part of the Fallon family. They have a higher status than we do. I wouldn't be surprised if he used the Fallon family's name to set off a storm. He'll be in power again, and the first thing he'll do is kick us out. Harry hadn't thought about that until Rome brought it up. We can't let him do whatever he wants. We have to stop him, Rebecca agreed. Wayne overheard their hushed conversation. He was afraid for them. They didn't know who they were messing with. Stephen was skilled to begin with, but after the transatlantic summit, he was even stronger. Wayne had always thought the 5 erudites from the Central Plains possessed the pinnacle of martial arts, but Stephen had surpassed them. Even if the 5 erudites joined forces, they might not be a match for Stephen. Aston caught wind of Stephen paying a visit to the Cassidy family's residence and wasted no time to inform Noor, who'd been guarding the villa with Dale during Stephen's absence. "Mr. Dale, get ready," Noor said after ending the call. "Let's go out and wait for Mr. Adams." "He's back?" Dale said in disbelief. "Are you messing with me?" Dale hadn't forgotten Stephen's battle in Cadiz. He'd fought 2 million martial artists by himself and won. They had all been grandmasters or martial grandmasters. And after an exhausting battle, a missile had been launched at Mount Wreath. Not even someone like Dale could survive a missile. For the past 3 months, he believed that Stephen was dead. Noor chuckled. "Why would I do that? If you don't believe me, just come outside. There'll be a surprise waiting for you." Noor didn't wait for him. He went outside first. Dale was filled with anticipation. If what Noor said was true, then Stephen had survived a missile. That could only mean his martial arts were more profound than what they had been before he left for Cadiz. With Stephen at the helm of the Fallon family, there was nothing to worry about. Dale quickly followed Noor outside. They were a bundle of nerves while they waited. 10 minutes later, a familiar face appeared at the gates. It was Stephen, and he was with Kim and Valeria. Noor and Dale looked at each other before hurrying over. Noor could barely contain himself, but he had to keep calm because Kim and Valeria were there. "Mr. Adams, you're back." "I'm glad to see you're safe," Dale said with a relieved sigh. Stephen smiled at them. "It's been a while. You two haven't changed. Let me introduce you to my wife and daughter." Kim had seen them around occasionally, but they'd never been formally introduced. The only thing she knew was that the young man, Noor, was Stephen's bodyguard, and the middle-aged man, Dale, was a security guard. If she knew their true identities, her jaw would probably drop. Victoria had been waiting at home. She was pleasantly surprised to see Stephen with Kim and Valeria. After several rounds of hugs and catching up, Victoria and Kim headed to the kitchen to prepare a feast to celebrate. Stephen went outside to play with Valeria. 1 hour and a half later, they had a scrumptious dinner. The house hadn't been this lively since 3 months ago. The next day, Victoria went out for her daily stroll around the neighborhood. She didn't look too happy when she returned, and Stephen asked her about it, but she gave him a vague answer. Something wasn't right, so Stephen asked Aston to investigate. It turned out that news of the former commander's return to the United States had spread across the country. When Victoria was outside, a crowd berated her when she tried to stand up for Stephen. "Do you want me to teach them a lesson, Mr. Adams?" Aston asked. "There's no need for that. They're just a couple of people who took gossip for the truth. Why should we lower ourselves to their level? Besides, this isn't the time to act rashly. It'll backfire on us." Aston frowned. "But the streets are filled with people criticizing you. You risked your life at Cadiz, but everyone's calling you a traitor." "Haven't you heard the saying?" Stephen asked with a smile. "Those who achieve great things don't care about minor details. A little grievance is nothing compared to our country." Aston heaved a sigh. "What do you want to do next?" "Well, first of all, we ignore the criticism so we can divert the enemy's attention from our goal to take them down. Second, we need to deal with Vindictus as soon as we can. I gave them a vial of the fake drug. It won't be long before Adler realizes. We need to get rid of Vindictus before then." "I understand. While you were away, I conducted an in-depth investigation related to their organization." "Good work. What'd you find out?" Aston left and returned with a stack of documents. He pulled up a large screen and turned on the projector, displaying a man's portrait. "Who's that?" Stephen asked. "He used to be the richest man in the South. He robbed tombs and excavated numerous national treasures. All of them were sold overseas at a high price. It resulted in the loss of our country's cultural relics. In the end, the National Security Agency found evidence of him conspiring with forces overseas. He died the day before the trial. His corpse was mutilated, so it was impossible to identify him." "That's suspicious. He died right before he was given his sentence, and no one could identify his corpse? He obviously pulled some tricks to get out of prison. What happened after that?" "They couldn't identify the corpse, so no one knows if the person who died was him or someone else. There's been no news of him since then, and the case has been left unresolved." Aston pressed a button, and the display flickered. The portrait of another man appeared. He used to be the successor of a crime syndicate. He hooked up with a woman from a rival gang, and when he was found out, he requested support from overseas and killed the leader of the rival gang. After the police detained him, he injured dozens of guards and escaped the day before his trial. No one has heard from him since. The display flickered again, and a middle-aged man appeared. He used to be the successor to a martial arts family. Because of his outstanding martial arts, he was hired to be a military instructor at the western border. He was responsible for training an army of 100,000. As he rose up the ranks, he obtained military secrets and became a spy for organizations overseas. Right before his trial, he died in his cell, and later on, his corpse vanished. Aston continued to introduce several more people. They had one characteristic in common. They were originally influential figures who'd committed a crime. After being arrested, they escaped or died mysteriously right before their trials. "They're members of Vindictus, right?" Stephen asked. "The members I've seen had similar experiences." Yes, these were all people who held prestigious positions. But after they committed crimes, they lost the spotlight. Vindictus saved them and brainwashed them to think that the country was the reason they lost their luxurious lifestyles. "All right, since we've obtained information on their members' identities, the rest will be easy to handle." "Yes, but there's still one more person left. She won't be that easy to deal with." "Who is it?" Stephen asked curiously. It wasn't easy to make Aston concerned. Whoever it was must be formidable. A woman appeared on the screen. "This is the second in command of Vindictus. Her code name is Gwen." "Was that the best photo you could find? It's too blurry to make out her face." "She's a martial artist skilled in disguises. No one has seen her real face before. She has a history of committing fraud. Have you heard of the businessman from Warhawk who made the stock market collapse in the southern region of the U.S.? She was the main reason for his success. She kidnapped 10 tycoons and made them cough up a total of $5 billion. This was a widely known scandal. The officials hadn't been able to hide the entire story from the public. The people knew everything there was to know except for the kidnappings. Stephen hadn't expected Gwen to be behind it. "There's more," Aston said. "What? What else did she do?" Emptying the stock market in the southern region and kidnapping 10 tycoons was serious enough. Stephen had no idea what other crime she could have committed. "She killed 18 generals across Europe and Warhawk. She has a talent for disguise, deception, and martial arts. She seduced them and killed half of them by catching them off guard." "Hearing that, it sounds like she's strong enough to rival an army." "There's one more thing. Do you remember the war with the Alliance?" "That happened a while ago," Stephen said. "That was when I first joined the military, and my mentor, Adrian Wynn, recommended me for a confidential mission. That's how I got the chance to take charge and become the commander-in-chief. Wait, did Gwen play a part in the war?" "You guessed right. To take revenge on the U.S., Vindictus sent Gwen to the 40 Alliance countries and convinced them to wage war on the U.S. She's technically the one who instigated the war." Stephen hadn't expected Gwen to have single-handedly caused a global conflict. At that time, the National Security Agency found evidence of Gwen's crimes and hunted her down, but she's never been caught, Aston continued. "Even to this day, she's a wanted criminal of the highest tier. They failed to catch her, but they did find billions of cash and tons of gold and jewels in her home. It was like a treasure vault. According to the National Security Agency's statistics, what they found was only a drop in the bucket of her total wealth. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she's as wealthy as a country. If she didn't become a criminal, she would have become the richest woman in the U.S. "That's unexpected. Now I'm curious about the boss of Vindictus. What kind of shocking background does he have?" "I apologize, but I haven't found any information on him." Aston looked guilty, so Stephen reassured him. "It's fine. If you found the boss's identity, it would have been too easy. This information is more than enough. You'll find him soon. We're not far from the truth. When the time comes, we'll uproot Vindictus and get rid of them once and for all." News of the former commander's return to the U.S. reached Vindictus. At this time, Odin, Gwen, Luther, and the other members were having a meeting. "The former commander's back. He made a full recovery," Gwen reported. "If he was disabled, there wouldn't be anything to worry about. We'll have to be careful when dealing with him from now on." "When the Sovereign was around, the former commander's threat level was just below his," Odin said. "Now that the Sovereign's no more, we have to eliminate the former commander." "That won't be easy," Luther warned. "Instead of getting our hands dirty and risk exposing our organization, we could use someone else's help." "Who?" Odin asked. "The Chevalier family. We've received intel that they were the first ones to break the covenant with the U.S. and end their seclusion. The excuse they gave is that the former commander killed several members of their family and violated the covenant first." So that's how it happened. After the Chevalier family ended their seclusion, the other aristocratic families followed their lead. It's a good plan. What could be better than achieving our goal by using a borrowed knife? Odin was aware of the hidden clans' reputation. Using them as tools was thrilling. Gwen agreed with the plan. "The more we take action, the more we risk exposing ourselves. The officials will find us soon. Before we achieve our goal, our organization cannot be exposed," Odin said. "We need to speed things up. Once we're done here, we'll leave the U.S. permanently and go overseas. Adler has rewarded us with multiple islands and a few small cities. If we leave the country and change our identity, no one will be able to find us. We can start over and live a new life." Gwen was confident. "Leave it to me. I'm used to getting others to do the dirty work for me." While Vindictus was making their move behind the scenes, the hidden clans didn't notice anything amiss. They continued to live a life of extravagance. It had been 3 months since they ended their seclusion. They relied on their strength to gain a foothold in the U.S., and even divided the power amongst themselves. Most of the royal, imperial, and Beaumont families had joined an aristocratic family. The aristocrats were like warlords who'd obtained their own territories. They relied on the outsiders as resources to live a good life. When they were in seclusion, there wasn't much to do except cultivate their martial arts. Their lives now were a stark contrast to the past. Joining the outsiders as upper-class circles was fascinating and different. As for the Cassidy family, Harry, Rebecca, and Rome used this opportunity to get to know the aristocrats. They felt like their status had risen to another level. Every wealthy family that looked down on them before had to look up to them now. During one of the many lavish cocktail parties, 2 men who had once bullied Harry pleaded with him. "Mr. Harry, I heard the former commander is the son-in-law of your family. Would it be possible to meet him?" "Former commander?" Harry snorted. "Why would you even want to talk to him? Forget the former commander. Even the current commander, Kylan Gale, would have to treat our family with respect." "Even if the former commander isn't as prestigious as he used to be, he's the founder of the Wyvern Group, and he developed Tanith Corporation into what it is today," one of the men argued. "He also recruited a genius businesswoman like Kim Cassidy." "The Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation?" Harry repeated in disdain. "Compared to the Cassidy family, they're nothing." The 2 men realized they'd said something wrong and rushed to agree with him. "Yes, you're right. The former commander is nothing but a waste of space." Harry, Rebecca, and Rome were proud and arrogant. They only frequented luxurious establishments, and they received a grand reception wherever they went. The reason for their lavish lifestyle was none other than the fact that the Cassidy family was now a part of the Fallon family. They had no idea that if it weren't for Stephen, their family's status would never have skyrocketed. But their luxurious lifestyles weren't smooth sailing for long. After a gathering with some of the younger members of the Chevalier family, Harry, Rebecca, and Rome received a message the next day. Every person who attended the gathering had gone missing except for them. It wasn't until the afternoon of the 3rd day that the Chevalier family found the bodies in the wilderness. After discovering that the last people they'd come in contact with were Harry, Rebecca, and Rome, they aggressively confronted and questioned them. Needless to say, the 3 of them were scared out of their minds. "We would never do something like that to the Chevalier family." The Chevalier family ignored them. "We'll leave you 3 alone for now because of your connection to the Fallon family, but we'll be back if we find out you're involved." Fortunately, Wayne and Rachel arrived in time and saved the Fallon family from embarrassment. Friends of the Chevalier family, this has nothing to do with them, because I just received news that more than 10 people of our Fallon family have also been killed, Wayne explained. They were thrown into the river. 5 of them were almost at the Grandmaster realm, and 1 was already a Grandmaster. These 3 wouldn't be capable of that with their non-existent martial arts. The Chevalier family thought about it and found his explanation reasonable. That's true, but who could have done it? They're targeting the Chevalier and Fallon families at the same time. Who would have the courage? At that moment, another message arrived. The Oceanic clan, which was independent of the hidden clans, found more than 10 of their members dead on land. This left Wayne and the head of the Chevalier family even more confused. The culprit wasn't just targeting their families. They were targeting every aristocratic family out there. After that, the situation gradually spiraled out of control. 3 days later, 20 members of the Estrella family were killed, including 2 Grandmasters. 5 days later, an imperial family that the Fallon family had taken in was wiped out overnight. No one was spared, not even the children. 7 days later, a royal family under the Chevalier family was annihilated. Their houses were burned to the ground. Even the Oceanic clan, who spent most of their lives out at sea and were independent of worldly affairs, found it hard to remain a bystander. More and more members of their clan were found dead as the days passed. As the tragedy continued, the aristocrats began to panic. "We have to find the culprit," the head of the Chevalier family declared. "If not, the next person to turn up dead could be you or me." And so, every member of the Chevalier family moved out to investigate. The clues led them to one person, the former commander-in-chief. "I knew it. It had to be him," the head of the Chevalier family exclaimed when he received the report. "He couldn't wait to target the aristocrats as soon as he recovered. This cannot be tolerated. Send an invitation to the family leaders and invite them to join us in getting rid of the former commander." At this time, life wasn't easy for Wayne either. The Fallon family's losses were significant. "Still no leads?" Wayne asked. "No, I haven't found the culprit yet," Rachel replied. "I have no idea who could be targeting the aristocrats." "The culprit isn't just bold, they have the strength to back it up. We need to be careful." "Dad, I think we should report this to Mr. Adams." Wayne considered it and agreed. But before he could contact Stephen, his subordinate hurried over with an invitation. The letter included the seal of the aristocrats. The founder of the aristocratic families had designed the seal with the intention of joining forces against a common enemy. If a crisis occurred, any leader of an aristocratic family could issue a seal to the other leaders. Once the seal was issued, their common enemy must be eliminated, no matter the cost. If the head of the Chevalier family issued the seal, then the recent murders had escalated into a crisis. "The Chevalier family wanted me to tell you they've concluded that the culprit is the former commander," Wayne's subordinate informed him. Wayne slammed his fist on the table. "That's nonsense. He's not that kind of person. He wouldn't kill his own people." The Chevalier family also said they found solid evidence to prove it, and they've issued the seal so our families can join forces and eliminate him. Wayne shook his head. "Sounds like they're determined to frame the former commander. They don't know what they're doing." Rachel put the pieces together. "Dad, all the evidence from the recent murders points to Mr. Adams. It's obvious that someone's trying to use the aristocrats to kill him." "Who could it be?" Wayne asked. "They're toying with us." "They're most likely a group who Mr. Adams wants to get rid of," Rachel said. "In any case, I need to meet with the other family leaders. We're required to participate since the seal was issued. If I'm absent, I would be violating the rules and regulations of our ancestors. The other families would come after us. I should attend the meeting and set the Chevalier family straight. It would be a disaster if the hidden clans got into a conflict with Mr. Adams." With that, Wayne set off for the Chevalier family's territory. The other family leaders did the same. Shortly after the invitations were sent, a meeting was held where every leader of an aristocratic family was present. This was a rare occasion for the aristocrats. It had been many years since they had all met at the same time. Aside from the hidden clans, the Oceanic clan had also sent one of their people to attend. Not every aristocrat was aware of the Oceanic clan's existence, but the leaders were in the know. Rather than attending in person, the head of the clan had sent his student, Lamar Rivera, to participate. He was talented in martial arts, and he was the successor of the clan. While the aristocrats were gathered together, Vindictus was having a meeting of their own. "How's it going? Have the aristocrats taken the bait?" Odin asked. "The Chevalier family found the clues we've left," Gwen said. "The aristocratic family leaders are probably holding a meeting as we speak. The former commander is done for." Luther agreed. "To be honest, the former commander and the Chevalier family were in conflict with each other even before we made our move. We don't know why the former commander killed off some of their members, but that's not important. The point is, the Chevalier family will take this opportunity to get rid of him. With the evidence we left behind, it'll convince the other aristocratic family leaders that the former commander is the culprit. He might be capable, but it's impossible for him to survive a joint attack by the hidden clans," Odin said. "Aside from the deceased sovereign, no one can face them head on. Let's sit back and reap the benefits." The aristocrats were holding their meeting in the middle of Washington, D.C. at a lakeside plaza. It had been cleared out in advance. There were 3 floors, and they were filled with guards. The leader of the Chevalier family, Hayes Chevalier, sat at the head of the table. His intimidating demeanor was one befitting of a leader. His attendant was beside him holding a long sword in front of his chest. It was sheathed, but the aura was so intense that it was on the verge of bursting. Sitting adjacent to Hayes was Cecil Shima, head of the Shima family. His clothes were plain and unadorned. He looked no different from a passerby, but none of the family leaders dared to look down on him. Out of all of them, Cecil was the most skilled at using poison. There were rumors that he'd perfected his poison techniques to the point where he could poison a Grand Master without them knowing. With his dangerous talent for poisons, Cecil had always stood out among the aristocrats. The head of the Estrella family sat across from Cecil. A saber was strapped to his back. His weapon was so large that the blade dragged on the ground. At this time, a wave swept across the lake. The successor of the Oceanic clan, Lamar Rivera, rode the wave and landed on the plaza. The tide passed, but none of the aristocratic family leaders had been affected, even though the wave had washed over them. Their clothes remained dry. "Looks like everyone's here," Lamar said, taking his seat. Hayes shook his head. "Not yet. There's still one person left. Let's wait a bit longer." "I'm here," Wayne called out. He strode to the plaza in large strides and glanced around the table. "Why don't we call off the meeting and head back?" If the aristocrats made Stephen their enemy, they would die a miserable death. Despite the competition, they all belonged to the same faction, and Wayne didn't want to see them fall. "What was that?" Lamar asked in surprise. "Did you just tell us to let this go?" "Yes, you heard correctly." "And why should we do that? My clan has always kept to ourselves, but now my people have been turning up dead. You want me to let it go?" Cecil spoke up. "My Shima family has also suffered heavy casualties. Are you telling me to ignore their deaths?" "As aristocrats, why should we be wary of the former commander?" Hayes asked. The rest of the family leaders shouted their agreement. Wayne tried to placate the chaos. "Everyone calm down." "And give us a convincing reason," Hayes said. "The former commander didn't kill them," Wayne explained. "The murderer is someone else. They're trying to frame the former commander and use us to kill him." "Do you have evidence?" "No, but—" Hayes cut him off. "You don't have any evidence, but we do." He instructed his subordinates to bring out a pile of documents that detailed the clues they'd found. Wayne hesitated. The culprit had forgotten the evidence to make it seem like the former commander was behind the murders. He knew Stephen was innocent, but he couldn't prove it. Hayes continued when Wayne didn't say anything. "Are you telling me that the evidence we found is fake?" Wayne was about to blurt out yes, but he thought better of it and swallowed his words. They wouldn't believe him without evidence. "My family also found evidence that the former commander killed my people," Cecil said. "My clan has evidence too," Lamar said. "Did you hear that, Wayne?" Hayes asked. Before this incident, the former commander killed Jameson and 4 of his students. At that time, I let it go because you asked. But this time, the former commander is out of control. He's violently slaughtering our people. We can't let it go so easily. Cecil agreed. The former commander has recovered. To us, he's a potential threat. We should get rid of him as soon as possible. Therefore, we, the Shima family, accept Hayes' request to eliminate him. My clan supports him as well, Lamar echoed. Wayne didn't know how to convince them without revealing Stephen's identity as the Sovereign. After the battle in Cadus, his identity had become even more confidential. No one could know that he was alive. In a moment of desperation, Wayne suddenly had an idea. Stop jumping to conclusions. Use your brains to think this through. Why did the former commander target the aristocrats? Hayes didn't even need to think about it. Because he wants us to submit to the Leviathan unit and work for the country. Wayne was stunned. What do you mean? The former commander used to hold one of the most prestigious positions in the country, but after Kylan defeated him in a duel, he fell from glory. He was disabled at the time, so he was content with his life. He survived, and that was enough for him. But now he's recovered, and the people are against him. He wants to turn the situation around and regain his previous reputation. And to do that, he needs to make a big contribution. Hayes is right, Cecil said. The fastest way to win the hearts of the people is to make the aristocrats work for the country. That would be a huge contribution. If I were him, I would do the same thing, Lamar said. The benefits outweigh the risks. Wayne was rendered speechless. From the perspective of an aristocrat, their analysis was logical and flawless. You have nothing else to say, right, Wayne? Hayes asked. Then I'd like to officially request assistance from everyone here to eliminate the former commander. Cecil was the first to accept. Then it was Lamar, followed by the head of the Estrella family and the rest. Wayne was the only one who remained silent. Wayne, you're the only one left, Hayes said. Do you disagree with my request? Yes, I'm against it. I suggest you stop while you can. Becoming enemies with the former commander will endanger our future. Hayes fixed him with a stern look. Wayne, do you know what you're saying? We're aristocrats. The former commander is an outsider. Why should we be afraid of him? The only outsider we need to be wary of is the Sovereign, Lamar said. If he was the culprit, we would have given up immediately. We wouldn't even be holding this meeting. The former commander is a nobody now, Cecil said. He has no affiliation with the military. He's just an abandoned U.S. citizen. How do you know he's not the Sovereign? Wayne blurted out. As soon as these words left his mouth, he realized that he'd slipped up. Although it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if they were intimidated by his mistake. But no one believed him. They gave him incredulous looks. Hayes was quiet for a long time before he finally spoke. Wayne, what happened to your prestige as the leader of an aristocratic family? Why are you so afraid of an outsider? Have some courage. Don't fabricate such absurd statements. Do you take us for idiots? Cecil expressed his agreement. Everyone knows the Sovereign was killed in Cadus. A missile struck the mountain. Do you really think he survived? Even if he is alive, what connection does he have with the former commander? Lamar asked. Wayne hadn't managed to convince them, but he was glad that his slip-up hadn't been taken seriously. Stephen's secret was preserved. Even so, he was still worried about the aristocrat's future. Wayne, are you still against this? Hayes asked. Wayne didn't answer. I didn't take you for a coward. Regardless of whether you agree or not, I've issued an order using the seal. Everyone else has accepted my request. It's not a big deal to have one less person with us. The founders of the aristocratic families had included an additional rule with the use of the seal. If there was a disagreement, the majority decision would pass, while the objection would be considered invalid. Wayne sighed and shook his head. Since you insist on going after him, then there's nothing more I can say. But I'd like to remind you that you're making a big mistake. I don't know why you're being so stubborn, Hayes said. What has the former commander done for you to make you so loyal? He's recovered and his martial arts are in peak condition, but he still can't compare to us aristocrats, Cecil added. Rachel had tagged along to the meeting. Seeing that her father wasn't having much luck persuading them, she tried to give them her input. Please listen to my father. He's not lying to you. We can't provoke the former commander. Hayes was having none of it. Rachel, your dad is getting old. Maybe his age is clouding his judgment, but you're young, so I don't know why you're agreeing with him. If you both are telling us not to provoke him, then we have to do just that to know what you're talking about. I'd like to see just how capable he is. Give us an official order, Mr. Hayes, Lamar said impatiently. The more they side with the former commander, the more I'm looking forward to fighting him. Hayes instructed his strongest subordinates to bring the former commander to the Lakeside Plaza. He, along with the rest of the aristocratic family leaders, would wait here. Wayne and Rachel took their seats and waited for the disaster that was about to happen. A group of uninvited guests were causing a commotion at Stephen and Kim's villa. It was Harry, Rebecca, and Rome. They were here to show off to Kim. Ever since the Cassidy family had officially become members of the Fallon family, their social status had risen to the same level as an aristocrat. In the past, Kim had always stood on top of the family. Now that they'd taken the lead, they couldn't miss the chance to show off. You haven't improved at all, Rebecca mocked. Look at our social circle. They're all aristocrats, and they're much more influential than the people in your circle. You should follow our example, Harry said. Your business won't be able to expand without a wide range of contacts. Stephen's recovered, but he has nothing now. He's just a commoner. Kim glared at them. Harry, Rebecca, if you're just here to run your mouth, then leave. You're not welcome here. Harry shrugged. It's your loss. If you don't take our advice, you'll regret it sooner or later. The three of them turned around and were about to leave. But before they could make it to the gate, a group of people in suits barged into the courtyard and demanded the former commander to show himself. Who are you? Dale demanded. You're trespassing on private property. This has nothing to do with you. Tell the former commander to come out, or we'll go in and kill him. Just as Dale was about to confront them, Stephen came out with Noor. I'm Stephen Adams. Who are you? We're from the Chevalier family, and we're here to arrest you. Stephen had been waiting for them. He'd heard about the recent massacre of the aristocrats, and all the evidence pointed to him, the former commander. Aston investigated and discovered that Vindictus was behind this. Let me give you a word of advice, the Chevalier family threatened. It's best if you cooperate. We know your family lives here. You don't want to see blood being shed, do you? Okay, I'll go with you. Stephen went over and held out his hand to the gate. Lead the way. The Chevalier family hadn't expected the commander to be so cooperative, but who were they to complain? This worked out in their favor. Their team split in half and sandwiched Stephen and Noor in the middle as they exited the villa. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome had watched the entire spectacle without a word. They started laughing after Stephen was taken away. If I remember correctly, the former commander was fearless, Harry said. People were afraid that he would go on a rampage if they triggered him. He became so meek after recovering. Rebecca snickered. He followed them without putting up a fight. He's not worthy of his past title. His cowardly behavior is proof that he's a traitor, Rome said. He has no dignity when his survival is at risk. I'm guessing he went to Cadus and exchanged the miracle drug for treatment. I don't know how else he managed to recover. That has to be it, Rebecca agreed. Those people were from the Chevalier family, Harry pointed out. With Stephen's current status, he wouldn't dare to cross them. He has no choice but to go with them. Kim had tried to protest when the Chevalier family surrounded Stephen, but he'd signaled to her to keep quiet. DeAndre had told her once that the Chevalier family was one of the strongest among the aristocrats. They weren't the top family, but they were ranked in the top 3. Don't panic, Miss Kim. Mr. Adams will be fine, Dale reassured her. He knew how capable Stephen was. He'd become so much stronger after his battle in Cadus. The aristocrats were no threat to him. The lake rippled as a gentle breeze blew across the plaza. The aristocratic family leaders waited quietly. After a while, Lamar checked the time. Hayes, I heard the former commander hired a skilled bodyguard after he was disabled. It's been an hour. And the former commander still isn't here. Do you think his bodyguard's holding people up? Should we send some more of our people over? Cecil suggested. There's no need for that, Hayes said. His bodyguard is skilled, but he's still an outsider. My subordinates are aristocrats. They're more than enough to deal with him. That's true, Cecil said. Remember when we joined forces back then? Even the Leviathan unit couldn't take us on. If it weren't for the 5 erudites, we would have never signed a covenant. But they've long since disappeared, and the Sovereign was killed not too long ago. Who else can compare to us? Wayne tried to persuade them again. I'm warning you again, this is a bad idea. Haynes shot him a glare. Be quiet. I let him go after you asked me last time, even though he killed Jameson and his students. But this is different. He's slaughtering our people. I know he's one of your relatives, but is it worth going against us just to protect him? It's true that we're in-laws, but that's not why I'm trying to stop you. I'll say it again. We can't afford to provoke him. Hayes was getting annoyed. Wayne, what's wrong with you? Do you really think an outsider has the ability to annihilate us? You're so timid, Cecil said disapprovingly. How are you supposed to lead the family properly? If you're not capable, then give up your position. It's humiliating for the Fallon family to have a leader like you. Wayne didn't respond. Frankly, he wasn't the leader anymore. Stephen was. Lamar agreed with them. In my opinion, Mr. Wayne isn't qualified to be the head of the Fallon family anymore. Why don't we choose someone else? After we dispose of the former commander, we'll select someone who's more qualified. That got Wayne riled up. They weren't just trying to kill Stephen. They wanted to interfere in the Fallon family's internal affairs. He couldn't let that happen. Before he could retaliate, Hayes' subordinates announced their return. Everyone turned to look. Stephen strolled to the plaza at the center of the lake with Nora under the escort of the Chevalier family's subordinates. He observed the people sitting at the lake. When his gaze fell on Wayne and Rachel, they lowered their heads, too ashamed to meet his eyes. Are you Stephen Adams, the former commander? The man sitting at the head of the table asked. Yes, that's me. Do you know why I asked my people to bring you here? Not a clue. Then let me explain. I don't want you to die a fool. You should know better than anyone else what you've done. Pay with your life. Stephen didn't have any reaction to the threats. And who are you? What right do you have to ask me to pay with my life? He knew that they were aristocrats, but aside from Wayne and Rachel, he'd never met the rest of the people at the table. The man laughed. I'm Hayes Chevalier, the head of the Chevalier family. Do you still think I don't have the right? I see. You have quite the prominent background. As expected of the former commander, Hayes praised sarcastically. You're calm even under such circumstances. I haven't forgotten what you did to Jameson and his students. Because of Wayne, I let it go. But now you're running wild and targeting all the aristocratic families. We are here to demand justice for their deaths. Stephen didn't reply right away. He glanced at the others sitting at the table. Are you also here to demand justice? That's right, Lamar said. You killed my people when we've never done anything to you. Your crimes are unforgivable. Today, I'll make you pay. Same here, Cecil echoed. In case you didn't know, I'm Cecil Shima, and I'm the head of my family. So all of the family leaders are here. I'm honored you gathered together for me. Lamar scowled at him. Stop this nonsense. Are you going to admit to your crimes? Stephen looked around the table. If I'm the culprit, then I'll admit it. But if I'm not, then I won't. It's that simple. Since you're accusing me, you should at least give me the chance to defend myself. I'll allow it, Hayes said. If you have any questions, then ask. I'll answer all of them. First, I want to know, what makes you think I'm the murderer? Stephen asked. We have concrete evidence. Stalling for time is pointless. Stephen let out a laugh. Concrete evidence? These murders took place in secret. The culprit didn't want to be discovered. Following that logic, why would I leave behind evidence for you to find? Do you really think the former commander is that careless? This time, Hayes and the rest didn't have a comeback. They hadn't considered that. Or, should I say, the aristocrats are more foolish than I thought. You didn't realize you were being led by the nose until I pointed it out. What did you say? Hayes demanded. You still won't admit it? You killed Jameson and his students. What's stopping you from killing others in our family? It sounds like you don't know the truth, so let me tell you about it, Stephen said. He hadn't planned on going against the aristocratic families. I'm the one who killed Jameson and his students. They violated the covenant and left seclusion to cause harm to our country. That's why I took action. Hayes interrupted before he could finish explaining that Vindictus was behind the recent murders. So you admit it. You're the culprit. We don't need the evidence anymore, Cecil said. We'll make him pay with his blood, Lamar added. The rest of the family leaders joined in and began hurling death threats at Stephen. Wayne and Rachel sat quietly in their seats. Now that things had escalated to this point, the conflict between Stephen and the aristocratic families was unavoidable. Stephen shrugged. It was obvious that they were determined to kill him. They didn't care what he had to say. If it's a fight you want, then let's do it. But the question is, do you have what it takes to kill me? Today we'll avenge our people, Hayes signaled to his subordinates. Just as they were about to make their move, Lamar interjected. Wait, I heard the former commander has a profound cultivation base. I'd like to test my skills against him. Hayes nodded in approval. I've heard of your martial arts. They say you're invincible on water. I'm not that great, Lamar spoke humbly, but there was pride in his expression. Why are you being so modest? Cecil asked. Your clan had made a home far away from here. We've never had the chance to witness your martial arts. I heard you have the ability to stay underwater for 10 to 15 days. The other family leaders began to compliment Lamar. The Oceanic clan was rarely on land, and they didn't have many interactions with the hidden clans, but their martial arts were rumored to be profound. The family leaders were looking forward to seeing one of their martial artists in action. Hearing their praises, Lamar became even more smug. Thank you for believing in me. The culprit is right in front of us. I won't disappoint you. Wayne shook his head. This was a meaningless fight. Lamar walked up to Stephen with a condescending look on his face. He was the strongest martial artist among the younger generation of aristocrats, and he had the best reputation. The former commander was nothing to him. Ready to die? You're getting ahead of yourself, Stephen said. Lamar ignored him and made the first move. Stephen just stood there and didn't try to dodge. Just as Lamar's fist was about to make contact, Stephen threw out a punch for a head-on collision. A violent explosion shook the plaza. Stephen's fist overpowered Lamar's, and he punched him across the face. Lamar staggered backward and fell into the lake with a splash. The aristocratic family leaders were dumbfounded. Lamar had been known as skilled among the younger generation, and he was the future successor of the Oceanic clan. But Stephen had defeated him in one move. Lamar didn't even have the chance to react. They thought back to their endless compliments for him before the fight and regretted it. They turned their attention from the lake to Stephen. They knew the former commander was strong, but they didn't know he was this powerful. Stephen glanced back at the table. Is there anyone else who wants to fight me one-on-one? To save time, I think you should attack me together. The aristocratic family leaders were infuriated that an outsider was looking down on them. Lamar had been defeated, but when the aristocrats joined forces, they were unstoppable. Hayes stood up and came forward. He held out his hand to his attendant, who'd been holding his sword for him. The sword seemed to have a telepathic connection with its owner. It unsheathed itself from the scabbard and flew into Hayes's palm. I'll take you on if you survive. The subordinates from the aristocratic families moved out one after another. They rushed towards Stephen like a tide. You're not qualified to fight, Mr. Adams. Norse stepped out from behind Stephen and charged into the crowd, disrupting their formation and knocking them back. They were on the ground in less than a minute. The aristocratic family leaders had heard of the former commander's bodyguard, but they didn't know he was this skilled. It turned out that even the former commander's underlings had the strength to run wild and wreak havoc. After Nor took down the first wave, a second wave of subordinates rushed toward him. He knocked them into the water with a sweep of his leg. There were some who took advantage of the gap to reach Stephen, but they were defeated in one move when they got close. Soon, the family leaders ran out of people to send out. None of their subordinates had a chance to resist the former commander and his bodyguard. Wayne and Rachel looked on impassively, as if they were used to this kind of scene. "Wayne, why are you just sitting there?" Hayes shouted when he saw that only the subordinates from the Fallon family were left. "Tell your people to attack." "Attack? Are you telling my people to send themselves to their deaths?" Wayne demanded. Even though he was the only head of the family in name, he had a responsibility to protect them. He would never let them die a meaningless death. "Have you always been this cowardly? You're not qualified to be a leader. If you're so afraid, then I'll take him on myself." Hayes raised his sword in his hand. A flame flickered to life and swirled around the blade, lighting up the sky. The heat swept over the plaza, setting the ground on fire. There was a legend that the sword had been forged from an erupting volcano. The blazing heat emanating from the blade was hot enough to burn a living person to death. Hayes was enveloped in a cascade of raging flames as he lunged for Stephen and Noor. The head of the Shima family, Cecil, joined forces with him. They attacked together. Stephen was alarmed by the sudden destructive momentum heading their way. Hayes and Cecil were nothing like their subordinates. "Noor, step back." Noor nodded and put some distance between them. Hayes ran across the plaza, leaving behind a trail of flames. The trees had been set ablaze, and a flaming aura stifled the air. Stephen stood where he was, making no move to dodge. As the sword came down, he reached out to stop the blade with 2 fingers. He was submerged in the flames when he came in contact with the swirling fire. The blazing inferno crackled and burned brighter. Noor was concerned when Stephen didn't come out of the fire. Hayes, Cecil, and the other family leaders watched with triumphant expressions. Wayne was the only one who remained calm. Even a missile couldn't kill Stephen when he was in Cadus. The ball of flame that engulfed Stephen expanded until it exploded with a loud bang. Streaks of fire shot out in all directions. At the center of the explosion, Stephen leapt into the air and released shockwaves of his inner energy. One of them struck Hayes, knocking the sword out of his hand and dousing the flames. Cecil stood his ground. He was skilled in utilizing poisons in battle. There were rumors that it wasn't just blood running through his veins. The poison had been mixed into his body fluids. His martial arts were inferior to the other family leaders, but his talent for poisons and defensive techniques made up for it. Unlike Hayes, Cecil wasn't immediately defeated by Stephen's attack. During their first exchange, when Stephen had been preoccupied with Hayes' sword, Cecil had inflicted several types of poisons on him. He typically only needed to use 1 poison to win a battle, but he couldn't underestimate the former commander. As Cecil deflected another shockwave, he was confused as to why Stephen wasn't showing any signs of being poisoned. Enough time had passed for his poisons to take effect. Not only did they not have an antidote, they were so lethal that a martial grandmaster could die from them if they weren't careful. Stephen landed a few feet away from Cecil. "You have any other tricks up your sleeve? If not, then it's my turn." Cecil didn't have time to react when a backhand to the face sent him crashing into the lake. At the villa, Kim couldn't stop worrying about Stephen. "Mr. Dale, I know you're skilled. I'm worried about Stephen. Can you catch up with him and make sure he's safe?" "I have no reason to refuse since it's you who's asking," Dale replied. "Rest assured, I'll bring him back safe and sound." He knew that the aristocratic families were no match for Stephen, but Kim was worried. So he walked out the door and rushed to the plaza in the middle of the district at high speed. Meanwhile, the plaza was deathly silent. The atmosphere was heavy, and the air was frigid. Hayes and Cecil were the strongest aristocratic family leaders, but Stephen had taken them down in an instant. This was simply unbelievable. The remaining family leaders stared at Stephen like he was a monster. Wayne and Rachel were as calm as ever. Considering Stephen's battle record, they wouldn't be surprised if he annihilated the aristocrats today. The difference in their strength was too great. Just as the family leaders were at a loss, Dale arrived in a hurry. Hayes, who had managed to get back on his feet, and Cecil, who had climbed out of the lake, rushed over the moment they saw him. The Fallon family was ranked 10th among the top 10 aristocratic families, but everyone acknowledged Dale's martial arts. It was because of his existence that no one dared to underestimate the Fallon family. Hayes greeted him with a smile. Mr. Dale, it's great to see you. The dignity of us aristocrats is depending on you. The former commander is right over there, Cecil said. You have to avenge our people. To their surprise, Dale ignored their request. Get out of my way. Hayes and Cecil thought Dale was in a hurry to get rid of Stephen and didn't care about the details, so they didn't take his rude attitude to heart. They stepped to the side and made way for him. Everyone watched expectantly as Dale headed straight for Stephen, but the next scene made their jaws drop to the floor. Dale knelt on one knee. I apologize for being late, Mr. Adams. His respectful tone gave them another shock. Why was Dale kneeling and addressing Stephen with formalities? The former commander was an outsider, and he'd somehow won over the strongest martial artist among the aristocrats to his side. Stephen motioned for Dale to get up. You came at the right time. Hayes snapped out of it when he stood up. Dale, have you lost your mind? You're an aristocrat. Why are you kneeling for an outsider? You've lived more than 200 years, Cecil said. Why are you addressing someone younger than 30 so formally? I'm disappointed in you. You're a disgrace to the aristocrats. Everyone started cursing Dale and telling him off. Dale shouted amidst the chaos. Be quiet. If you think I embarrass the aristocrats, then let me ask you, can any of you win against him in a fight? Silence filled the plaza. From what they'd seen of Stephen's strength, he had the ability to wipe out the aristocrats. They had over 1,000 people on their side, but not a single one could take him down. Got nothing else to say? Dale snapped. To think you're the leaders of aristocratic families. Don't you know that in the world of aristocrats, it's the law of the jungle? We submit to whoever is stronger than us. Hayes, Cecil, and the others couldn't argue with him. The aristocrats had always abided by this principle, and that hadn't changed even though they'd ended their seclusion. Dale gave them a disdainful look before turning to Wayne. Wayne, you're here too. Why didn't you talk some sense into them? Mr. Adams isn't someone they can take lightly. I tried, but they didn't listen to me. Hayes, Cecil, and the others thought back to the beginning of the meeting. Wayne had repeatedly told them not to go against the former commander, but they thought he was being a coward. How were they supposed to know that an outsider would be this strong? It dawned on Hayes that Wayne hadn't given them the full story. Hold on. Is the Fallon family under the former commander's command? That's right, Wayne confirmed. I'm not the leader of the family anymore. I remember 3 months ago your family was scattered across the country. Was that because... Yes, it was Mr. Adams's instructions. Cecil still had his doubts. What exactly happened? From what I've seen, he's strong, but not to the point where you would submit to him. Wayne smiled cryptically in reply. By the way, I remember you mentioning that he might be the sovereign, Haynes said. Were you telling the truth? The other family leaders stared at Wayne, afraid to hear the answer. The thought that the former commander was the sovereign terrified them. As soon as Hayes brought it up, he retracted his statement. Never mind, that's impossible. He died months ago in Cadiz. He couldn't possibly be alive. Sorry, but it's true. Stephen reached into his pocket and took out the tiger crest. It glowed on his palm. He held out his other hand, and the broken imperial sword appeared in a scatter of light. Everyone recognized these two treasures. They were the sovereign's tokens. They were convinced that Stephen was the sovereign, and it was a logical conclusion, because who else but him would have the ability to wipe out the aristocrats? What's more, shortly after the sovereign supposedly perished on Mount Reef, the former commander was sighted in a mansion in Cadiz. Although he was rumored to be a traitor, the two events were closely related. It didn't take a genius to figure out that the sovereign and the former commander were the same person. Wayne, Rachel, and Dale got down on one knee in front of Stephen. Any lingering doubts had vanished. Hayes, Cecil, and the others believed that he really was the sovereign. Stephen cast them a sidelong glance. What about you all? You want to keep fighting? Hayes hurried over and joined Wayne, Rachel, and Dale on the ground. The Chevalier family will be under your command. The Shima family, Estrella family, and the rest also expressed their willingness to submit to Stephen. The Oceanic clan, which had always been independent, had no choice but to follow their lead. The aristocratic families had always been powerful. The U.S. was wary of them, so they'd forced them to sign a covenant. That was the only way they could be at ease. Whether it was before or after seclusion, the aristocratic families were a rowdy bunch. They'd never been unified until now. It was an unprecedented event. Stephen had thought it was a waste of talent for the aristocratic families to spend their days partying and idling about, but he'd never planned to make them submit. Since things had turned out like this, then he would give them a purpose as his subordinates. "What do you think about working for me and putting your skills to use?" Stephen asked. Hayes and the others expressed their agreement. "Then it's settled. Keep my identity as the sovereign to yourselves, and don't tell anyone that the aristocratic families are under my command." "Understood," they replied. But there was still one mystery left unsolved. "Mr. Adams, can I ask you a question?" Stephen already knew what Haynes wanted to ask. "You want to know who framed me?" "Yes. They used us and almost caused our people to be wiped out. We can't take this lying down." "Since you want to know, I might as well tell you." Stephen briefly explained the situation to Vindictus. "Vindictus used the Transatlantic Summit to dispose of you on the mountain?" "Yes. They're a cunning and meticulous organization. It won't be easy to deal with them. That's where you aristocrats come in." Stephen waved them over. "I've already come up with a countermeasure." Everyone stood up and huddled around him. After hearing his plan, they began to take action. The day after the aristocratic family leaders gathered at the Lakeside Plaza in the district, a piece of news was released to the media. The aristocrats had been unified, and a new leader had been chosen, Hayes Chevalier. The world never saw it coming. It was widely known that the aristocratic families were powerful. Who would have thought they would be unified? Their existence was shocking enough. Who knew what other changes they would bring after unifying? The aristocrats are unified? Odin, Gwen, and Luther were stunned when they received the news. They were planning to use the aristocratic families to get rid of the former commander, but they'd facilitated a large-scale unification instead. This was not a good outcome for Vindictus. If the aristocrats were united, that added one more enemy to their list. "What's the status of the former commander?" Odin asked. He cared more about him than the aristocrats. "According to the intel I received, he's not dead," Luther replied. "There's a rumor going around that after the aristocrats joined hands and were selecting a leader, Wayne Fallon gave up his chances to protect the former commander." "What? How is the former commander this lucky? He shouldn't have been able to survive a joint attack by the aristocratic families. And what is Wayne thinking? Why would he give up his position for someone so worthless?" "Maybe it's because his uncle DeAndre Fallon is the head of the Cassidy family, and he especially dotes on the former commander's wife, Kim Cassidy. I heard DeAndre was the one who helped Wayne become the head of the Fallon family, so it makes sense that he'd want to return the favor." Odin's expression darkened. "Damn it. We have more problems than we started with. Looks like we'll have to take care of the former commander ourselves." Stephen was actually the one who announced the news to the world. He wanted to divert Vindictus's attention and cover up the fact that he became the leader of the aristocratic families. Aside from that, he was also planning to hold a ceremony to celebrate the aristocrats' unification. It was an unprecedented event, so it had to be as grand as when the sovereign was appointed. As the first aristocratic family to submit to Stephen, the responsibility of making arrangements for the ceremony naturally fell on the Fallon family. Stephen had decided to hold the ceremony in Washington, D.C., so Wayne handed over the task to the Cassidy family. Helen was excited at the thought of contributing to the Fallon family. Even though they'd become one of them, Wayne, Rachel, and the rest of their family still looked down on them because they weren't qualified. Their chance to prove themselves had come. Helen immediately called the younger generation of the Cassidy family over. "All of you, listen up. This is a rare opportunity for us. The ceremony for the aristocrats' unification is a heavy responsibility, and Mr. Wayne has entrusted us with the preparations. We can't let him down." Harry, Rebecca, Rome, and the others were enthusiastic at the prospect of gaining Wayne's favor. To make sure that the aristocrats were satisfied with the ceremony, they even allied with the Hayes family in Santa Ana. They did their best and spent a lot of their money to make the ceremony a success. Because no matter how much wealth they had, their status was stagnant unless they gained the Fallon family's recognition. They spent a week making the perfect arrangements for the ceremony. Even Wayne and Rachel couldn't help but praise them for their good work. Harry, Rebecca, Rome, and the others were very pleased with themselves. Next on the agenda were the invitations. The ceremony was a grand event, and it would be held on the outside rather than on the aristocrats' territory. Anyone with status would want to attend. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome's smiles widened at the thick stack of invitations on the table. Choosing which guests to invite had been left up to them. Harry picked up one of the invitations. "I've made my decision. The Cassidy family will each get one invitation except for Kim's family." Rome nodded in agreement. "We can't let them participate, especially Stephen. He's cunning and he's recovered. That's a terrible combination. If we let him attend, who's to say he won't start going around using the aristocratic families as names to his advantage?" "Exactly," Harry said. "We can't pick and choose all of the guests, but we do have a say for those of lower status." Rebecca was doubtful. "I don't know about this. Grandpa dotes on Kim. If we exclude her from the ceremony, he'll be mad at us." Rome brushed aside her concerns. "Rebecca, you worry too much. This is a grand occasion, and not just anyone can attend. Every guest has a prominent status. Even Grandpa might not be on equal footing with them. I heard Mr. Wayne had the opportunity to become the leader of the aristocrats, but to protect Stephen, he voted for Hayes Chevalier. Grandpa never liked Stephen in the first place. His impression of him now should be even worse." Rebecca was convinced, so they got to work and distributed the invitations. This set off a wave across the country. Wealthy tycoons flocked all over and spent an exorbitant amount of money just to get their hands on an invitation, but it wasn't that easy to get one. Because of the grand ceremony, the Cassidy family's popularity soared. They went from being an unknown wealthy family from Los Angeles to an affiliate of an aristocratic family. Even the royal, imperial, and Beaumont families who had ties with their own aristocratic families had to suck up to them. The younger generation of the Cassidy family was especially popular during this time. Numerous upper-class circles lowered their heads and tried to please them for an invitation. There was a rumor going around that Harry had taken a fancy to a certain beautiful woman. She wasn't interested in players, but to get her hands on an invitation, she didn't hesitate to spend a night with him. Rebecca was even more pleased with herself. When she distributed the invitations to her friends, her status in the upper-class circles soared, satisfying her vanity. Under such circumstances, the younger generation of the Cassidy family who had once felt like they'd lost themselves were now at the top, enjoying the glory of the aristocrats. Helen was delighted that the preparations for the ceremony were going well. The Cassidy family was at the center of attention, and it had always been her lifelong dream to make the family a success. Not to mention, DeAndre was here to witness just how far their family had come. When DeAndre found out that Kim's family didn't get invitations, he went to find Harry, Rebecca, and Rome to question them. "We didn't think they had a right to participate," Harry answered. "Why not?" "There are rumors that Mr. Wayne could have become the leader of the aristocrats, but because Stephen offended the Chevalier family, he had to vote for Mr. Hayes to protect him." Harry spoke indignantly as if Wayne had suffered a huge loss. He, Rebecca, and Rome were actually disappointed, because if Wayne had become the aristocrats' leader, the Cassidy family's status would have risen again. And it was Stephen who'd made them lose out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. DeAndre was infuriated. "So this is all because of Stephen. Wayne must have made that difficult decision because I'm his uncle, and our families are in-laws. I should apologize to him." "Don't blame yourself, Grandpa," Rebecca said. "If anyone should be sorry, it should be Stephen." DeAndre sighed. "I wanted to bring Kim's family to the ceremony and introduce them to some of the influential aristocrats." "What's there to feel bad about?" Rebecca continued. We treat them pretty well. Not letting them attend the ceremony this time is nothing compared to what we've done for them. You're right. It's not a big deal. There'll be another opportunity. Maybe this will finally teach Stephen a lesson. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome exchanged triumphant glances. They couldn't wait to see the reaction on Kim's face when she found out. It didn't take long for Kim to hear that her family were the only ones being excluded from the ceremony. She was disappointed. The entire family is attending except for us. What's the point? Stephen asked. It's like any other ceremony. Even if I was invited, I wouldn't have the energy to attend. Rebecca said our family doesn't have the right to attend. It was Grandpa who told her not to give us invitations. He wasn't happy that Mr. Wayne had to give up his chance to become the aristocrats' leader to help you. It seemed like Stephen's plan had worked. If that was what DeAndre and Rebecca thought, then it meant that Vindictus was thinking the same thing. Seeing Kim look a little disappointed, he asked, Do you really want to go? Not really, it's just that the entire family is going. People will talk if we're the only ones who don't show up. Okay, then it's decided. You, me, my mom, and Stephanie. We'll all go. What are you talking about? Rebecca told me that the invitations are limited edition. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are, it's hard to get one. Besides, they were handed out a while ago. How are we supposed to go without an invitation? I don't need an invitation. Hayes wouldn't stop me. I think he'd be happy if I went. The unification of the aristocratic families was the most important part of Stephen's plan. He'd decided not to show up at the ceremony to keep up the act, but Hayes, Cecil, Wayne, and the others hoped that he would attend. This was a rare event, and what was a ceremony without their leader? Kim wasn't sure about that, but in the past, whenever Stephen made bold claims like these, they always came true one way or another. Mom's in New York City right now. I'll arrange for someone to pick her and Stephanie up. 2 days passed in a flash. Today was the ceremony to celebrate the aristocrats' unification. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome had inspected several venues before finally choosing a manor 5 miles away from the heart of the district. The manor was extravagantly decorated, and martial artists were everywhere. Those who had been assigned to guard the venue had reached at least the Grand Master realm. Aside from the aristocrats, there were many outsiders attending the ceremony. This was an important celebration. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome had invited guests that could match up to the aristocrats' reputation. The three of them stood at the entrance and greeted the guests with a condescending attitude. The once high and mighty upper class who'd looked down on them were now lowering their heads and greeting them politely. It was a thrilling feeling. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome were in high spirits as they watched the guests enter the venue after exchanging pleasantries. They were feeling proud of themselves, until they saw a few familiar faces. It was Kim, Stephen, Victoria, and Stephanie. They were about to walk right in when Rebecca threw out her arm to stop them. What are you doing here? We're here to attend the ceremony, Kim replied. Who gave you the courage? Rebecca glanced at Victoria and Stephanie. And why are you bringing so many people with you? Harry stepped in. Kim, are you crazy? Did you forget? Grandpa doesn't want your family to attend. If you know what's good for you, then get out of here. Rebecca held out her hand. Well, it's not impossible for you to attend. Take out your invitation, then we'll let you in. We don't need an invitation to get in, Stephen said. Rebecca glowered at him. Do you know where this is? Not just anyone can be a guest. Of course I do. The aristocrats are celebrating their unification today. If you know that, then get out, Harry said. You have no right to be here. Stephen turned the question on him. Why don't I have the right? Do you have an invitation? No. Then there's your answer. Harry faced the crowd of guests who were waiting to display their invitations and go inside. Did you all hear that? He doesn't have an invitation, but he wants to attend the ceremony anyway. Isn't he shameless? Everyone's gaze fell on Stephen's group. Rebecca was feeling smug. Not only did every guest hold a prestigious position, but the ceremony was also being broadcasted live by the mainstream media. It had become the focus of the entire world. Being called out like this had to be a humiliating experience. We're the ones who decided on the guests, and I don't remember giving an invitation to anyone named Stephen. Harry sneered. Do you still think you're the commander? Unfortunately, that's not your position anymore. Even if he was the commander, he wouldn't be qualified to attend, Rome said. It would be a different story if he was on the same level as the sovereign, though. Stephanie leaned over to Kim and said in a low voice, Should we leave? Maybe. They're not letting us in without an invitation, Kim whispered back. Stephen had been confident when he told her they didn't need an invitation. She thought he was planning a surprise for her, but it didn't seem like they'd be able to attend. Stephen heard them whispering. Didn't we come here to attend the ceremony? We haven't even stepped in the door. Why should we leave? Stephen was still full of confidence, and Kim didn't want to rain on his parade, so she gave him the first excuse she could think of. Well, Mom looks a bit tired. I'm worried about her. Victoria caught on and realized that Kim was trying to help Stephen out. Now that you mention it, I've been feeling a little under the weather. Why don't we go home? I'm not that interested in the ceremony anyway, Stephanie added. Aunt Victoria's health is more important. Let's go back. Wait, I can get us in, Stephen protested. I know, but something also came up at the company, Kim said. I need to hurry home and make a phone call. Yeah, I have something to do too, Stephanie said. Stephen could tell that they were trying to save him from embarrassing himself. Before he could say anything, Harry interjected. Where do you think this is? A park? You can't just participate just because you want to. Rome chimed in. If you had an invitation, we would have let you in. But you don't, so leave. There's no place for you here. Kim had enough of their ridicule. She held Stephen's hand. Ignore them. Let's head home. Stephen sighed. Okay, since you don't want to attend, then let's go. It's just a ceremony anyway. It's nothing special. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome smiled triumphantly as they watched them turn around and walk away. Stephen threw them a dirty look over his shoulder. Feeling proud of yourselves? I don't think there's a reason to hold this ceremony anymore. Harry scoffed. You're not the host, and you're not the star of today's ceremony. That decision isn't up to you. Stephen ignored him. He took out his phone and dialed a number. Tell them to cancel today's ceremony. Stephen's phone call shocked the crowd into silence. After a moment, Harry, Rebecca, and Rome burst into laughter. They had been given the responsibility to make preparations for the ceremony, so they knew how grand of an event this was. There was no way it could be canceled. Even the leader of the aristocrats, Hayes Chevalier, wouldn't be able to make the decision on his own. He would have to get approval from the other family heads. Stephen, are you delusional? Harry asked. Who do you think you are? Do you really think you can cancel a big ceremony with just a phone call? Dream on. You're a disgrace to the Cassidy family. You and I both married into the family, Rome said. Why are we so different? Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue. Forget about him. They consoled the crowd and went back to greeting the guests. No one paid any more attention to Stephen and his group. Meanwhile, there was a commotion among the aristocrats. Mr. Adams asked us to cancel the ceremony, Hayes announced in disbelief. The preparations were in place, and the whole world was paying attention to the ceremony. It would be a bit inappropriate to cancel it now. What do you make of this? Cecil asked. This is Mr. Adams's decision, so we'll do as he says, Hayes said. He probably has his reasons. None of them really understood, but they decided to follow Stephen's order anyway. Hayes sent someone to the entrance of the manor to convey the news. At this time, Harry, Rebecca, and Rome were still immersed in the excitement of greeting guests from around the country. Subordinates from the Chevalier family rushed out of the venue and told them to stop everything. The three of them were so surprised that they stood there, not knowing what to do. Why are you just standing there? Inform the guests and send them away. Sir, what happened? Harry asked, confused. We were just told that the ceremony is canceled. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome couldn't believe it. Had the ceremony really been canceled? It hadn't been long since Stephen made that phone call. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? Harry felt a chill run down his spine. Rebecca and Rome felt like they were about to lose their minds. Seeing them in a daze, the Chevalier family's subordinates grew impatient. What are you waiting for? Sir, is that really true? Harry asked. He needed confirmation. Are you questioning us? Mr. Hayes told us personally. Do you need him to come here and tell you face to face? No, that's not necessary. Good, then wrap it up. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome shared a look. Stephen had recovered and returned to his peak condition. Did the official secretly restore his position as the commander-in-chief and keep it from the public? Harry shook his head. No, that can't be right. Even if he was the commander, he can't order the aristocrats around. Can he? Rome's eyes widened. No, unless he has another identity. Harry and Rebecca felt a sense of dread wash over them. The three of them had arrived at the same conclusion. It would be a disaster if it turned out to be true. Rome was the first one to calm down. Listen to me. Let's not be nervous. This is just speculation. We need to verify it. Rebecca hurriedly nodded. Right, let's not make any wild guesses. Harry wiped the sweat from his forehead. Let's take care of the guests before anything else. They pretended like it was no big deal, but they couldn't shake the butterflies in their stomach. They almost tripped as they made their way into the venue. Kim tried to comfort Stephen as they walked back to the car. It's okay. It's like you said. All ceremonies are the same. I don't think we would have enjoyed it anyway. Right. Since we're all free later, let's go out for a meal, Stephanie suggested. Stephen only smiled in response. Kim thought he was forcing himself. Just as she was about to continue persuading him that it wasn't that big of a deal, she received a phone call from Jasmine. I just heard the ceremony got canceled. Okay, Kim replied absent-mindedly, but then she processed Jasmine's words. Wait, what did you just say? Tell me again. I said the ceremony has been canceled, Jasmine repeated. Are you serious? Kim asked, glancing at Stephen. It's true. The news came out just now. While Kim was on the phone with Jasmine, the Sierra family called Stephanie to tell her the same news. Kim, Stephanie, and Victoria turned to look at Stephen. They couldn't figure out how he'd done it. This was the first time the aristocratic families had been unified. Everyone was looking forward to the ceremony. It was impossible to cancel it with one phone call. Stephen noticed the curiosity on their faces. He couldn't tell them that he was the leader of the aristocrats. They wouldn't believe it. To tell you the truth, that manor is under my name. It's up to me whether I want to lend it out or not. Since when do you own that manor? Kim asked in surprise. The previous owner was the Wyvern Group's business partner. He gave it to me. I've never had a use for it until now. I understand, but the aristocrats paid a lot of money to hold the ceremony. It's being broadcasted. You can't just cancel it. It's not canceled. I was just giving those three a little scare. I don't know if you noticed, but that manor was too small to fit all the guests. They're just changing the venue, so don't worry about it. Meanwhile, Hayes and the other aristocratic family leaders were discussing the ceremony's cancellation. Wayne, I think we should tell Mr. Adams that this isn't a good idea. On the surface, Hayes was the leader, but because of the close connection between Wayne and Stephen, Wayne had to approve before they made any major decisions. Wayne felt the same way. Since they were in agreement, Hayes gave Stephen another call. I was just about to call you. Don't cancel the ceremony, just change the venue. Did you check out the manor when you arrived? I was there just now, and it's not big enough to accommodate all the guests. I understand. We'll choose a bigger venue near the manor. Since you're nearby, can you please attend the ceremony? Stephen chuckled. Since you want me to attend so much, then I'll go. Great. I'll send someone to pick you up right now. Hayes didn't want to miss Stephen again. The ceremony would only be perfect if he was present. Kim, Stephanie, and Victoria didn't know who Stephen was talking to, but it sounded like they would be attending the ceremony after all. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome were about to tell the guests inside the manor that the ceremony was canceled when the Chevalier family's subordinates called them back and told them that wasn't necessary. They also said that Hayes and the other aristocratic family leaders wanted to talk to them. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome's status wasn't high enough for Hayes and the others to just come for a chat, so they went to see them instead. Hayes explained that he and the others had come to a unanimous decision to relocate to a bigger venue because the manor was too small. The three of them were relieved because that meant the ceremony wasn't canceled and Stephen had no connection to the aristocrats. After their meeting with Hayes and the others, the Chevalier family's subordinates introduced them to a new venue and gave them the responsibility of relocating the guests. The Cassidy family was affiliated with the Fallon family, and Harry, Rebecca, and Rome had made arrangements for the ceremony, so they were the most suitable candidates for this task. "I did notice there were more guests than we anticipated," Rome said. "The aristocrats probably invited more guests at the last minute. We need to hurry to the new venue and finish setting it up." Harry agreed. "We're in charge of the venue, so we can't let Mr. Hayes and the others down." The three of them rushed to the new location. After some rearrangements, it looked as good as new. It was even grander than the manor. Next, it was time to relocate the guests. Of course, entering the new venue required the guests to display their invitations again. As Harry, Rebecca, and Rome were inspecting the interior, they passed by a few familiar faces. Hayes had arranged a private corner for Stephen, Kim, Stephanie, and Victoria while they waited for the interior to be set up. He couldn't wait to make Stephen the first honored guest to step into the venue. Unfortunately, Harry, Rebecca, and Rome were none the wiser. They were shocked to see Kim's family sitting in the corner. The guests hadn't arrived yet, so why were they here? They didn't even have invitations. The three of them walked in front of Stephen, who was casually leaning against the back of the couch with his legs crossed. "What are you doing here?" Harry demanded. "We're here to attend the ceremony," Stephen said. "How did you get in? You don't have an invitation. You're not qualified to be here." "Since we're here, that means we're qualified." "Even if you are related to the Cassidy family, you're not allowed to enter without an invitation. Are you trying to provoke the aristocrats?" Rebecca pulled her brother back. "Harry, don't waste your breath." She spotted a group of guards from the aristocratic families and waved to get their attention. They hurried over. "What's going on here?" Rebecca pointed at Stephen. "They don't have invitations. They broke into the venue." This was a serious matter, and she knew that this time, even DeAndre wouldn't be able to side with Kim. The guards gave Stephen and his family suspicious looks. "We're attending the ceremony whether you like it or not," Stephen said calmly. His words provoked the guards. They decided to throw them out using force, but when they lunged for him, he knocked them down with one move without getting up from the couch. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome hadn't realized that Stephen was this good at fighting. These guards were from aristocratic families. They weren't your typical martial artists. Rome turned pale. "Are you crazy, Stephen? These people are aristocrats. Laying a hand on them is a serious crime." "You're finished," Rebecca threatened. "We're calling in reinforcements." "I know you're strong, but you've messed with the wrong people," Harry said. The three of them sounded the alarm. Everyone who received the alert moved out. Over 100 grandmasters and above rushed to the hall. Even DeAndre and the Cassidy family ran over. The guards from the aristocratic families surrounded Stephen, Kim, Stephanie, and Victoria, staring them down menacingly. DeAndre and the Cassidy family had also arrived. "What's going on here? Who's causing trouble?" the guards questioned sternly. Harry pointed Stephen out. "Him. He's making a mess of the ceremony." Rebecca and Rome smirked. They knew that Kim's family was done for. Even DeAndre wouldn't be able to turn the situation around. Stephen was sitting on the couch, looking relaxed and oblivious to the tension in the room. Kim, Stephanie, and Victoria watched nervously. These weren't your run-of-the-mill thugs. They worked for the aristocratic families. They wouldn't let this go. DeAndre had a furious look on his face. "Stephen, what have you done? You've assaulted members of the aristocratic family. Even I can't help you now." Helen was also fuming. "You could have messed with anyone here, but why did you have to go after the aristocrats?" "Is that man your relative?" the guards asked. "You should understand that his familial connections won't get him out of this. Not only did he provoke us, but he was also attempting to sabotage the ceremony. This is a serious matter." They were about to grab Stephen when an authoritative voice rang out. "What's all the commotion about?" The guards positioned at the outermost circle recognized the aristocratic family leaders. Everyone retreated and made way for them. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome stood to the side, anticipating the upcoming confrontation. Hayes, Wayne, Cecil, and the others had been alerted. This was it for Kim's family. All of the aristocratic family leaders had arrived together. The head of the Oceanic clan was among them. Their intimidating auras flooded the venue. A heavy pressure bore down on everyone in the room, making it hard for them to breathe. Harry demanded an answer the moment he came over. "Why are there so many people crowding here? What happened?" But when Hayes and the others laid eyes on the man sitting on the couch, they were surprised to see that it was Stephen. Their imposing auras dissipated. They weren't expecting to see him at the center of the commotion. While they were at a loss, Harry took the initiative to report on the situation. "This man is causing trouble." Hayes and the others looked at Stephen awkwardly. Harry didn't notice and kept going. "His name is Stephen Adams. He doesn't have an invitation, but he insists on violating the rules and attending the ceremony. He married into the Cassidy family, but don't let our familial ties stop you from holding him accountable." Rome added, "He used to be the former commander, but he used his experience on the battlefield to injure your people." The more they spoke out against Stephen, the more anxious Kim became. She met DeAndre's gaze with a pleading look in her eyes. He turned away, indicating that this was out of his hands. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome noticed the silent exchange and became even more smug. They didn't realize that their crisis had arrived. Hayes did not look happy after hearing what they said. "That's ridiculous." He motioned to one of his subordinates. "Slap some sense into him." Harry, Rebecca, and Rome were on cloud nine. The leader of the aristocrats had spoken. Stephen wouldn't be able to avoid being punished. Kim, Stephanie, and Victoria worriedly glanced at Stephen, who was still sitting calmly on the couch. He would never take a slap lying down, especially not in front of this many people. Hayes' subordinate was a martial grandmaster. He came forward and raised his hand, delivering 3 resounding slaps in quick succession. As a martial grandmaster, even a simple slap was accompanied by a strong gust of wind. The crowd stepped back to avoid ending up as collateral damage. His moves were so fast that Kim, Stephanie, and Victoria didn't know what happened until it was over. Stephen hadn't been slapped. It was Harry, Rome, and Rebecca. They were on the ground, bewildered and groaning in pain. Everyone was confused. "Mr. Hayes, did your subordinate make a mistake?" DeAndre asked. The crowd had the same question, but their status wasn't high enough for them to question the aristocrats' leader. "How ignorant," Hayes muttered. "Indeed, they deserved it," Wayne added. DeAndre didn't understand what they meant. "You 3, take this as a lesson and learn from your mistakes," Cecil said to Harry, Rebecca, and Rome. "It hasn't been long since we changed the venue. Stephen and his family were the first ones here. Isn't it obvious that he's qualified to attend? He doesn't need an invitation." The rest of the family heads nodded in agreement. The crowd was astonished, especially the Cassidy family. They never expected Hayes and the others to place so much importance on Stephen. The head of the Oceanic clan only just realized that the man sitting on the couch was the sovereign. Their clan was independent and spent most of their lives at sea. They weren't up to date with recent events, and they rarely got involved with outsiders. Although they'd assisted Stephen before, the head of the clan had sent his subordinates to take him to the island. He had never seen the sovereign in person before. The head of the clan wanted to say hello, but he thought better of it. It would raise questions as to how they knew each other. The Cassidy family couldn't understand what was so special about Stephen and his family. Why didn't they need an invitation like the rest of them? And why did the aristocratic family leaders know of their existence? Helen couldn't contain her curiosity. Why are they an exception? Hayes was not amused by her question. You're from an insignificant family in Los Angeles. Are you asking me to explain myself? Helen knew she'd made a mistake. She lowered her gaze. I wouldn't dare. After that, no one raised any more questions. Kim's family was officially allowed to participate in the ceremony. Harry, Rebecca, and Rome had just experienced a slap to the face from a martial grandmaster, but they didn't dare to complain. They picked themselves off the floor and went back to finalizing the finishing touches for the venue. When the ceremony began, Kim's family sat in the best seats. Harry, Rome, and Rebecca had just been reprimanded, so they could only stand at the edge of the crowd and watch from afar. How did Stephen get them to let him attend without an invitation? Harry grumbled. Did you not see their expressions? They look scared of him. He used to be the commander, but that's not his position anymore. Rome brought a finger to his lips, signaling for him to lower his voice. He glanced around, relieved to find that no one was paying attention to them. Stop talking so loud. Did you forget that we were just slapped just now? I don't get it either. I can't tell if Stephen has a higher status than when he used to be the commander. Not all of them knew who he was. The head of the Oceanic clan hadn't seen him before. Harry was frustrated. They didn't explain anything. Nothing's clear. We have no idea why we were slapped. The ceremony was in full swing. The entire world was watching the broadcast, and Vindictus was no exception. Odin, Gwen, and Luther were the core members of the organization. At this time, they were also sitting in front of the TV, watching the broadcast intently. Neither of them spoke until the ceremony was over. Odin reached for the remote to turn off the TV. Any new discoveries? No, I still don't know why the aristocrats formed an alliance, Gwen said. Their individual families are strong enough. Who could have forced them to join hands? The only people they're cautious of right now are the Leviathan unit, Luther explained. When they ended their seclusion, the Leviathan unit wasn't happy about it, but there was nothing they could do. They most likely started pressuring the aristocrats back into their territories, and that's why this alliance was formed. Odin considered his explanation. It made sense. From the looks of it, their unification is not a threat to us. If we play our cards right, we can use their alliance to benefit us, Gwen said. As long as the aristocrats and the Leviathan unit keep up their conflict, it'll work in our favor. The enemy of the enemy is a friend. While they're preoccupied, the country has no time to worry about us. Then it's time to make preparations for our final operation. We risk exposing ourselves whenever we make a move. It's about time to end this. Odin glanced at his watch. It's getting late. I have to leave now or I won't make it in time. Gwen, while I'm gone, I'll leave everything to you. Yes, sir, Gwen replied respectfully. Luther didn't know what was going on. He was ranked third in the organization, but the hierarchy was strict. Odin kept certain operations a secret from the core members until right before they were carried out. Gwen had only just found out about this current operation a short while ago. Luther was still in the dark. Gwen, what's our next operation? I found out about it before you came. Our boss's plan is brilliant. There are no loopholes. Don't keep me guessing. Get to the point. All right, to understand his plan in its full capacity, I'll need to tell you a story first. Have you heard of the 5 erudites from the Central Plains? Luther perked up at the mention of the 5 erudites. Even someone who detested the U.S. knew about their history. Their fame made it impossible for the people to be ignorant. Of course I have. They're famous for being the 5 strongest martial artists in the United States. Our country used to be weak, but now we're among the top and our martial artists are well known overseas. This was all possible because of the 5 erudites' influence. They say the aristocrats are afraid of them. There are rumors that the 5 erudites forced them into seclusion, and after that, the aristocrats made their home in the mountains and forests to practice their martial arts, hoping to one day train one of their members to be strong enough to defeat the 5 erudites. It's a shame that they never succeeded, even after decades in seclusion. There are rumors that any country that manages to get at least one of the 5 erudites on their side will have the strength to replace one of the major powers. That's why the US is regarded as one of the strongest countries in the world. You know a lot, Gwen said. Right now, they only exist in legends. No one has ever seen them. Those from more than 100 years ago are the only ones who were lucky enough to see them in action. Luther sighed in disappointment. I was born a century too late. I could have witnessed their glory with our own eyes. Gwen couldn't help but laugh. Why are you laughing? You didn't have to be born that early. With their cultivation, their lifespans are much longer than the average person. They can live anywhere from 300 to 500 years. 100 years or so is still the prime of their lives. Are you saying they're alive? But they haven't shown themselves in public since more than a century ago. Luther knew that those who practice martial arts could extend their lifespan after reaching a certain point on the martial path. Many major events had taken place in the country in the past decade. The war with the Alliance, Devil Hall's comeback, and the Sovereign's death in Cadiz. These 3 major events alone could have ruined the country, but there was no reaction from the 5 erudites.